Help
Help
me.
me.
Help me.
Me. Whoa.
Oh,
Help.
help me. Yeah. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums today with Steven Reid. Yes, we are going to talk about the great British prog rock band Arena.
Phenomenal band.
Figured we throw a little tidbit from what is it? Crying to be Heard? Is that what the?
Yep. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, you know.
I'm not sure that we were crying to be heard, but
yeah, maybe not. But you know what? It's all in fun. We just wanted it. You know, we like to have fun here on the channel.
I think people will be crying now we've been heard, but that's okay.
They'll be crying to get the hell out of here. They're like, up, thumbs down right away.
Yes. Close the window. Close the window.
Anyway, for those of you who may not know who Arena is, and if you're one of them, man, I'm glad you came and tuned in here. So Arena were one of those bands that kind of popped on the scene in the early mid-90s in that kind of second or actually third wave of progressive rock that the 90s were all about. So, you know, you had the classic bands in the 70s, you had the bands of the early 80s, mostly British bands, so Marillion and IQ, Pendragon, 12th Night, Palace, right? And then in the early 90s, you had all these other bands that started kind of popping up, and Arena were one of them, alongside, you know, here in the U.S., Spock's Beard and Ekelin and Anecdote and Anglagard and the Flower Kings and all these other bands that were just coming out of the woodwork in the early 90s. And for me, I don't know about you, Stephen, one of the things that I loved about Arena is they kind of continued on with that kind of Fish era Marillion style that I love so much.
Well, you see,
I see already. He's like, well,
it's going to be an interesting journey, isn't it?
That's okay.
Do you want me to start and burst that bubble then?
Go ahead. All right. So we're looking at 9 albums here. So the band is still playing and pumping out albums to this day. In fact, their last album came out, 2018? So
2018, yes.
A lot of good stuff. This is very kind of atmospheric, melodic mix of traditional prog with a little bits of prog metal at times, but not sort of. Some of their albums are kind of heavy. And they've had, is it 4 vocalists? I'm trying to remember. Is it 3 or 4? I think it's 4, right? It's 5. Okay. And all of them sound pretty similar, I think.
And I'll say 5 because of the breaking news.
Oh, that's right, because Damian Wilson's in the band now.
Damian Wilson is in them. Now, anyone who's watched our Threshold video will know what a fan I am. Is he Arena's singer? I'm not sure. I'm a little worried.
He goes against everything I just said, because I just said all the other guys kind of sound alike. He doesn't sound like any of them.
No.
Like there's a lot of the singers who have been in this band kind of sound like Fish a little bit.
A little bit, yes.
And I think that's what they were going for. But Damian Wilson certainly doesn't. So I will be very interested to hear what
I'm really looking forward to it, because the new album, I think, should have been this year. I'm guessing it's now going to be next year, because this has only just happened in the past few weeks with Paul Manzi leaving, who also left Cats in Space just a few months before as well. I'm devastated on both counts.
Great singer. He's a great singer.
Phenomenal singer. I'm glad I saw him with Cats in Space before he left, because he, and to be fair, that's a band of singers. They can do that on stage, and it was something to behold, I have to say. But yeah, this band is a tale of great vocalists, I have to say. So I'll start with album number 9, okay? And I think you're therefore going to disagree with me, Peter, but album number 9.
Oh, no. All right, that's it. We're done. We're done here.
Controversial already. It's controversial already.
Oh, man, you're killing me.
So we're right back to 1995 here. This is the debut album from the band, so 25 years ago. So if you've never listened, what a great time to come in 25 years on from the debut. John Carson is the vocalist here. This was his one and only album with the band. And anyone who's watched the Fish video that we did and the Marillion video that we did will know I love Fish. He's too Fish. Don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that. It's not that he's too Fish.
I haven't said a word.
No, you didn't need to. I saw those eyes. Right, but it's not that he's too Fish, because you can't get enough Fish. I've heard his new album, by the way.
Oh, cool. All right, cool.
Oh, wow. Right, okay. But anyway, let's leave that for another day. To me, there's loving a band and loving their sound, and then they're trying to be that band. This is I'm almost trying to be Marillion here. That's a good goal. I like it once they move on a little bit from that. Do you know, they never lose that, but they do lose that. So, do you know, so for anyone who doesn't know, Arena, I think the only two members who've been there from the start are Clive Nolan. So that's the keyboard player also in Pendragon and Shadowland and lots and lots and lots and lots of other things. And Mick Pointer. So that's the guy who formed Marillion. So there is a reason why that classic prog sound was always going to be where this band started. Now, I'm saying it's too derivative. I'm saying it's too Marillion. Steve Rodriguez on Crying for Help Part 4, I think it is as well. So he's pulling his past in there as well. None of that is a bad thing. None of that is a bad thing, okay? Because I like all of these albums, as to be said. You've got Out of the Wilderness on this album, Valley of the Kings. This is great symphonic neo-prog, if you want to throw that kind of title in there. And had they stayed with the sound of that album, I'd have still have bought every album that this band did. I just personally feel that there was greater things to come.
I will say, we'll get to that eventually, get to that album again eventually in my list here. But I will say this band has nicely kind of changed up things little by little throughout their career. Like for the most, you know, they have, it seems like lately I've been talking to a lot of bands that have like eras. And again, I guess with this band, the eras happened to be when singers kind of came and went, because each era featuring different singers, the music kind of morphed a little bit. They still have that kind of sound that you know it's Arena, but they haven't released the same album over and over and over again by any means.
Yeah, that's a real strength.
Yeah, and you know what, this was just as difficult for me as the Alter Bridge show we just did. This catalog is just so good. And what was interesting about this catalog for me is like, I haven't listened to this band in a long time. I listened to them a ton in the 90s. Like I bought their first album when it came out and I was just really, really into them. And I kind of started to drift a little bit away from Arena, probably like right shortly after Pepper's Ghost was 2005, Contagion, and you know, like probably about like 2005 or so. I was listening to them for already a decade, and I started to listen to other things. So there's a couple of the later albums which I never bought, and I've been listening to on YouTube quite a bit. And I've been playing some of these old albums, and man, hit me just like they did way back then. That's why it's always good to rediscover a band you loved, but maybe haven't listened to in a long time. I'm just walking around the house singing these songs. That's why I was like, let's sing a little Crying for Help here, because I was in the house by myself. My wife went to work this morning, and I'm like, help me. I'm walking around the house, and I'm like an idiot, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm loving this again, you know? So anyway, long story short. So The Seventh Degree of Separation is my number 9 from 2011. Which I don't actually have a copy of yet. So all the ones that I love the album cover, all the ones, a couple that I didn't have, I'm already going to order from Amazon. I'm ready to go on that. Yep, there we go. They used the guy who did the album artwork on that album. I forget his name, but he's worked with everybody under the sun. Yeah, you recognize the artwork. He's worked with Opeth. He's worked with.
I can't get the name either. So there we go.
Yeah, a great Paul Manzi vocal performance on that album. He's a pretty damn terrific singer.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite of recent years.
Yeah. Great album. Thief of Souls, Close Your Eyes. I love the majestic Tinderbox. Great song. Burning Down is this good, heavy, brooding type of song, which they do that style quite well. They have this kind of, they're not this kind of big, bright, uplifting prog band. They've got a lot of really good moody songs with that like kind of ethereal keyboard work. And, you know, Clive Nolan, when he wants to be, he's a complete virtuoso. But I think his playing on the latter albums is a little different than what he did early in their career. And just fantastic guitar work from John Mitchell. All right. But this to me has always been a band that the musicians are stellar. They're pretty. It's pretty much the same guys for the most part. You know, you've got Nolan, Pointer, and Mitchell, who have been pretty much constants for a long time. And then you bring all these excellent singers into play. And these are just great albums. They really, really are. I mean, if you're a progressive rock fan and you know, often find yourself looking for a newer band, they're not a new band by any means, but something post like 1980 to kind of sink your teeth into, got to give these guys a try.
Yeah, you do. You definitely do. So I'm probably going to kill you, Peter, because I'm staying early. He's giving me those eyes again. He's giving me those eyes again. I feel like I'm in trouble. I'll be on the naughty step before I know it. But there you go. So
no more new promos for you, dude. That's it. You're done.
There we go. I'll change it, I promise. So this is Pride. This is from 1996. This is Paul Wrightson who's on vocals here. So it's a different singer, but this is a continuation in many ways from the debut, because they're crying for help. Parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are on the debut. Then you've got the next 4 parts on the second album. And same again. I mean, I like all these albums. This is a really good album. I think that they're beginning to add a little bit more of themselves here, and they're like an epic song. You've got 3 epics here. You've got Fool's Gold, Sirens, and Empire of 1,000 Days. I mean, we're in proper prog territory here, because we're looking at songs that are, you know, heading towards 10 minutes, 13 minutes, 42, and they don't waste it. The arrangements are great. The change of moods and atmospheres is fantastic here. So same again, we're talking about the worst of a great bunch here, in my opinion, is what we're talking about here. But I prefer it once they find even more of their own sound, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I respect that. I totally do. I'm just kind of busting your chops here about, you know, making the face and stuff. But I will say, like, those first 2 albums, and I'll talk about it more as we get on here. If you're a fan of like Script for a Jester's Tear, Clutching at Straws, Misplaced Childhood, Era of Marillion, man, these albums are going to be right up your alley. Yeah. Do they sound a little too Marillion derivative? Yeah, possibly. But you know what? For me, and we've talked about this, we talked about it on the Marillion show and the Fish show. It's like, you know, I lost a little something when Marillion jumped ship. And Hogarth is great, and I like a bunch of the Hogarth albums, but I was kind of missing that.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and Arena for me kind of filled that gap in a big way.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Yeah, very much so.
So my number 8, another one that I don't have the physical copy of, Double Vision from 2018. Really strong album.
Yeah.
With a weird album cover, but
yeah. It's actually making me look quite good here, and that says something. So there you go.
Yeah. Another, again, these albums with Paul Manzi on vocals, very much vocal oriented, and he's just a dynamite singer. The Mirror Lies Scars, you got the 22-minute Legend of Elijah Shade, which is terrific. It's moody, it's epic, it's got this peaks and valleys, just a really, really well-constructed song. And I think on Double Vision, the band have kind of like settled back into their earlier symphonic sound. A lot of their middle period albums have more of like a hard rock metal feel to them at times. And I think this album is them getting back to their roots a little bit, which, you know, I don't mind at all, because I love the early stuff. So good album, really good.
Well, I'll kind of pick up on that theme, because for me, I'll go number 7. I'm going the 7th Degree of Separation. There we go. We'll have all the 7s in one go. And to me, I see this as a John Mitchell album. Clive Nolan's there, and his presence is there all the way through. You can't have an Arena album without Clive Nolan's fantastic keyboard work. But I think that this is the one. The songs are shorter. They don't kind of have that grandiose feel in the same way that most of Arena's catalogue does. And I really like John Mitchell. Don't get me wrong, his guitar work he plays for It Bites, Frost, his Lonely Robot solo band are fantastic. The guy's a tremendous talent. He's a lot of work behind the scenes with other bands too, but I don't necessarily need him to take the lead in the way that he does on this album in Arena, and that's just because there's so many other strengths in the band. And that to me, it's probably, even though I've ranked it higher than the first 2, it's maybe the album out of the catalogue that when I went back to now, I knew least of, because it just didn't quite have that either immediacy or need to pull me back into it. I do like it. I still like it a lot, and I probably liked it more now when I listen to it again, but it doesn't quite grab a hold of me in the way that nearly everything else by them does, to be fair. Do you know, it's Paul Manzi's debut as well, I mean, so he's kind of finding his feet a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and I agree with your statement about Clive's kind of like almost invisibility on that album, because I think that, no disrespect to Mick Pointer, he put this band together, so this is his band. But for me, a listener and a fan, this was always Clive Nolan's band. that's the reason why I listen to Arena, because he's a terrific keyboard player, and there's like a lack of like keyboard and synth solos on some of these latter period albums that you had a wealth of in the beginning. And that's what most of us love about classic prog rock, is the keyboard and guitar solos, right? Got to have them, and the way they infiltrate, and way that helps create the moods, and, you know, the big sweeping symphonic arrangements. And it's like, and not that I dislike guitar muscle in Arena's music, because they've always had that. They've always had a lot of guitar.
John Mitchell's a great player too.
And he is, but do I want to hear much more of him than Clive? I don't know. I like them on equal footing. And that's what a lot of those earlier albums, like, you know, The Visitor and Pepper's Ghost, they're equals, right? So I don't know if I want to hear one, you know, and I would probably complain if they put out an album that you barely heard John Mitchell and it was all Clive Nolan. So here, I mean, I guess I like the both of them, because we've heard so much material from this band over the years where they're on equal footing. They're just as much a part of this band's sound, where when one starts to take over too much from the other, kind of throws it off a little bit, and you notice it, right?
And I mean, credit as well for Kevin Moore, I think it is, who plays the guitar on the first two before John Mitchell joined the band. That to me is maybe partly why I view what comes after as less of that 80s prog sound, because that's, although Arena definitely touch on that all the way through, they still do. John Mitchell's work doesn't really, his playing doesn't, his sound doesn't really, you could never confuse John Mitchell or Steve Rothery. Whereas on the first two albums, I think you could confuse Kevin Moore for Steve Rothery, and I mean that as a compliment, because to even sound like that guy, you must be doing something right.
Yeah.
Do you know? And that's, to me, is maybe, and I'm not decrying Steve Rothery here, I love Marillion, okay, but that to me is, because there can be only one, you know, Highlander. No, sorry. So that to me is why I prefer the later stuff. But then when he dominates an album, that's not what I was looking for. So
it's difficult, right? It's
just a happy guy.
Oh boy.
You know, sorry.
Oh, is it me? Okay,
it's you. Yeah, I'll stop talking for a change.
Because we always go on these like sidetracks, and I'm like I forget like who was the last one to talk about. 2003's Contagion is my next one. Another one that's I like a lot, and I think that this is probably their, would you agree, their heaviest album, or one of them? I don't know.
Yes, it's one. I would say one of the two heaviest albums. Yeah.
I mean, all I do is all I got to listen to is Witch Hunt, and that'll tell you the whole story right there. I mean, that's a nice, beefy, heavy, catchy number. Painted Man is good. Ascension, again, reminds me of kind of the early Marillion influence. You got the Mea Culpa, which is a gorgeous song. And I got to say, Rob Souden knocks it out of the park on this album. Another great singer that was in this band.
Absolutely, he does.
Right?
Doesn't he just? Yes, the guy is incredible.
Yeah.
He's one of the real highlights of this band, although he's not been in them for a long time now. But he's one of the highlights of this band for me. I think that he's such an unrecognised talent.
Was he in the band the longest? I'm trying to think of who spent the most time in the band as the singer.
I think over a period of time, I think he's the longest. He did 3 albums. Paul Manzi did 3 albums. But I think in terms of period of time, he would be the longest, yes. I can't tell you the times. Trying to think. Let's work that out as we go.
Yeah. Is it safe to say that Damian Wilson won't be the longest running vocalist in Arena?
Oh, well, that would be my guess anyway. That would be
based on his track history, right? I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but
yeah. I mean, I don't know about Sugarly Peg or quoting a Sugarly Peg. I don't think Damian Wilson often takes his jacket off.
Yeah, I know, right?
Guy, by the way, and I've met him after a gig when he was with Threshold, the 75th time ago, I think. And he's a great guy and a really likeable guy, but he doesn't seem to stick around bands all that long for whatever reason. Yeah, there you go. No. So, right, number 6 for me, and we are at The Unquiet Sky, which is probably quite dark and brooding, a cover for on this.
I see me, actually. I see my reflection.
You do, yes. That's, dark and brooding, as I said. So there you go. So, as most of these albums are, which is something we've not really touched on, this is a concept album. Okay, so if you love a concept album, you'll love Arena. If you don't like a concept album, just listen to music, because you'll still love Arena. Okay, so we're kind of in a horror story kind of territory here, hence your dark brooding album cover. And to me, this feels a little bit like a response to Seventh Degree, because Clive Nolan's back. He's maybe not back to where he was, but he's back. And I do like an album where everything kind of comes together. The artwork conveys what's inside, and it does. I found this quite a tough nut to crack when it first came out, and on the back of an album that had slightly disappointed me with Seventh Degree, I was beginning to get a little concerned, to be honest with you, that maybe we peaked, to be honest. But it's still a good album. I like it more going back to it now, but I think to me there's real highlights here. How did it come to this? That's a great song. I think The Bishop of Lufford is a great song.
That's a good one.
Moody, atmospheric, conveys the message. I'm not convinced it kind of does everything as well as that from start to finish. But I'm being super picky here. I could listen to this often and all the way from start to finish without ever complaining. But there's just, in my opinion, there's just better stuff in the catalogue.
Fair enough. Number 6, Immortal for me, from 2000. Another really good album. I think it's the first with Rob Southerland on vocals.
Yep.
I find this album and Contagion kind of their two heaviest albums, I think. And again, it's relative. It's not really metal, but for Arena, it's definitely heavier. Chosen is catchy and heavy. The Butterfly Man is really good. Ghost in the Firewall. You got the big 20-minute long movie drome, which is and they do epics quite well. They don't often do the big, tremendous epics, but when they do them really good. And again, what I like about that song, you got a lot of keyboard and guitar interplay between Nolan and Mitchell, which I like hearing that. That's like a plus for me. But, I remember when this album first came out, I listened to this quite a bit. And, terrible album cover notwithstanding.
It kind of tells the story a bit too much.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever. I get it. And this again, I wish I could figure out who it was, because they used a lot of these bands used a lot of the same guys to design their albums around this time. I don't know. I'm sure I'll find it somewhere. But anyway, a very solid album, I think. A good kind of mid-period release from them.
So for me, next I'm at number 5, and I'm in 2005, and we are with Pepper's Ghost here. Now, this is a limited edition version of this album, but I don't know if I've ever seen one that's not, if that makes sense. I don't know if yours is a joke case. There you go. So you have a beautiful cartoon running through this. So yet another concept album. You've got 5 heroes taking on a demon, and they all kind of get a little bit in the comic inside. The writing is minuscule, I may add. Slight design flaw, because I can read none of it whatsoever. But it is a beautiful thing, and it is very nice. And it's a proper hardback one, which I must admit I quite like. I prefer it over a digipack myself. This is Rob Southerland's last with the band, and I think that he takes on characters very well. That was what struck me, is he tends to have sung on albums, certainly 2 that have got a real story feel to them, and he plays different characters within those albums. And he's not theatrical. You couldn't, confuse what he's doing for being as part of a stage play. I'm sure he could do that, to be fair, because he's got the voice to do that. But he's a rock singer with that kind of progressive tinge that brings him into the ability to play characters and various things like that. I really like his vocals. I love his vocals, actually. I don't think it's the most aggressive album. I think, if anything, John Mitchell's maybe a little bit too deep for me here on this one. But there's stuff like Smoke and Mirrors, The Eyes of Lara Moon. So there's a lot of stuff to sing along with here too, which if you're going to go and see them, I like too. And there's still things like Opera Fanatica, which is a proper epic length song which hits home. We're verging into territory now where I'm beginning to think these are really, really, really good albums, is where I'm at. So Pepper's Ghost, that's my number 5.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think when that album came out, that was probably just a couple of years before you joined Sea of Tranquility, and that was one of the highest rated albums across all of our writers that year. That was that was a top 10 across the entire staff that year. And I remember going to Nearfest that year, and a bunch of us bunch of the writers went to the festival, and everybody was talking about the Arena album, that Pepper's Ghost, that year. So that was that was a big deal in 2005. My number 5 is the Unquiet Sky from 2015. Another one that I don't have that I've had to kind of get caught up with. And my first impressions after a couple listens to that were pretty good. I like that album. I think that's pretty strong. Again, another great Paul Manzi vocal performance. Just amazing how a lot of their singers just have a similar style. It's crazy. The Demon Strikes. Yep. Demon Strikes is a great song on there. You mentioned the Bishop of Lufford, which is great. Traveler Beware is another really good one. That's probably one of the heavier tracks on the album. But I agree, that's more of a kind of a dark, atmospheric album for them. Yeah, but I think it works.
Great headphone album.
Yeah.
On, dim the lights, and just allow yourself to be taken into what they're trying to say there. Yeah.
Whereas this is like pop on in the car, flip back the moonroof and crank it while driving around. That album is a headphone album that's listening to at night and just kind of curling up in the corner. Yeah,
absolutely. So for me now, for number 4, I'm going to go back to I'll show the inside, because I really, really don't like the cover very much. We're on double vision here. And what I like about this again is this, to me, as I say, I was a little concerned with the 2 albums that had come before, that I would still like them, and I would still obviously buy all the stuff because I've got it in my hand. But I'd begun to worry that for me, everything that had come before was better, which is never a nice place to be with a band. There's plenty of them out there, unfortunately. Paul Manzi's Farewell, which we didn't know at the time, and I really that does sadden me because I really do think that the guy is fantastic. I hope personally, and everybody's got to make a living, I think he's still in the suite. I would go and see them with him in them, I have to say, but I'd love to see him up there singing, new songs, current music from his band. That appeals to me more, so I think that's a bit of a loss.
You got to wonder if he's sticking with the cash cow, right? I mean, what's going to make him more money? Probably playing.
You can't argue with that. I mean, I went to see Cats in Space, middle of last year, maybe the end of last year. It's a small venue. It was a nice venue. It was about 3/4 full. They were fantastically good. Really, really good. But you do wonder how much of a living, that sort of band's going to make. A lot of the guys in that band have maybe arguably made their money, so they can maybe afford to go out and play these little venues and have some great fun and give some great performances. Don't get me wrong. Whereas for the guys who maybe not had that legacy, they got to pay the bills. So if you're going to spread yourself across 3 or 4 bands, as Paul was doing at one point, you got to work out what works best. And if the one that's paying the bills says, well, we need you free those months, but you got to be free those months, don't you? So, But it's maybe not that. There's not been very much detail about why he's left either band in recent times. But I hope we see him and hear him in other things. He's on the soon-to-be-released new Arion album, which is rather special. For Doctor Who fans like me, yes, we're proper geek territory here. I've got Kiss behind me, and I'm a massive Doctor Who fan. Tom Baker on it, that's exciting too, but that's for another day.
Well, every Arion album has been pretty special, so that everyone is something to look forward to. Yeah,
absolutely. So,
all right, number 4, Pepper's Ghost. 2005. I think you kind of said, another concept album. I love I'm a comic book guy, as everybody knows, so I kind of dig. And ironically, I think mine is probably a little bigger. Well, no, I shouldn't go there. Hold on. Let me take that back. My booklet artwork is a little bit larger to read than yours. I was going down a really bad path there for a second.
You've announced that to the world, Peter. Thank you.
I'm just trying to get you back for the you ranking Pride and the Lionsgate so low. But anyway, and it might be the basically, I don't know, but this I can read, and I remember getting this and I was like, well, that's fantastic, because I love comic books. So, but yeah, a great album, and like I said, nice mix of 70s style prog rock, touch of hard rock, Bedlam Fair, Shattered Room, Purgatory Road. I mean, just a very, very, very special album. One of my favorites from the band.
Absolutely. So this is interesting because it shows where we diverge a little bit, because my number 3 is Immortal, and I will still agree that is a thoroughly awful album cover. Yeah, and it doesn't tell you what's inside at all, in actual fact. I mean, it does, because there is a theme, and it's Immortal ? So they're not claiming to live forever. We're asking more, what's going on and what is it about. And the cover does convey that. Probably doesn't sell albums though, but there you go. It's Rob Sowden's debut with the band, and I mean, I've raved about the guy already. I just think he's tremendous, and I just love the blend on this album. I think that it's just a really strong blend of keyboard and guitars. As we say, that to me is what this band's always been about. It's pompous and it's grandiose, but it is heavy and it can be straightforward. And I must admit that I kind of like when they crank it up a little bit, as they do at this stage of the catalogue. I mean, Movie Drome maybe does steal the album a little bit. It is where we just under 20 minutes, and it's worth every second of that, it has to be said, but still, for me, I could dip into this album just about anywhere and get excited. The Butterfly Man and Ghost in the Firewall, that's one that stays with me for a long time after I've listened to the album. So I really like Immortal, I have to say. It's an excellent album for me.
It is. That's very good. I like it a lot. All right, number 3, Songs from the Lion's Cage, 1995, the debut. I mean, it's got that Marillion feel. Like I said, I bought this when it came out, and I immediately felt a kinship to it because I love those Fish era Marillion albums so much, and I was missing that. The at the time, 1995, Hogarth had been in Marillion a couple of years. I still like those early Hogarth era albums, but they were starting to kind of move away from that early sound, and I really missed it. This kind of filled right in. John Carson sounds just like Fish. I mean, it's just like
it really does.
It clicked off. This album clicked off all the right buttons for me. It's got the mix of like muscular riffing with a lot of keyboards from Clive Nolan. Out of the Wilderness, Valley of the Kings is terrific. Jericho's terrific. You got all the crying for help parts between this and the second album. Midas Touch is just fantastic. Great guitar solos. And you got Solomon to kind of finish off the album. I mean, the whole
that's a classic of the band, it has to be said.
It is, yeah, and I think this, and that's why I've really enjoyed listening to, especially the first 3 albums, or specifically the first 2 albums. They just kind of took me back in time to like the early mid '90s when I became so into this new wave of progressive rock, which was just coming from all over the place, all parts of the world, and Arena reminds me of that time period. And that was, because it was a cool time for me because I was like a metalhead all throughout the 80s. And then all of a sudden metal starts to go into the underground. Grunge and alternative is all over the place. And I just totally was not into that. And I went and discovered prog again. And I was like, I'd listened to some of the classic prog bands, but all of a sudden I discovered bands like this and Enchant and Echelon and Spock's Beard and, Pendragon and all this other stuff. And I was like, and it just, when I listen to this album, it brings me back to those days. And I always treasure that quite a bit. So I'll always have a soft spot for this album. And, it's got some epic, really memorable songs.
Absolutely, you do.
Yeah,
absolutely do. And I mean, arguably the vocals on that album at that stage actually sound more like Fish did then.
Yeah, exactly.
Interestingly, as he was trying to, move somewhere different, and his voice was changing. It was interesting hearing other guys singing songs, because not just Arena, there was other bands too where you thought, is that Fish? And that was maybe just a step too far for me, but I understand your attachment to it, and I'm not diminishing the early stuff in any shape or form. It's just, as we say a lot, it shows the strength of the catalogue.
Yeah, absolutely does. Yeah.
So for number 2, I am on The Visitor, and it's a shame because that's quite a dark album cover too. That's maybe the best way to show it there. It's a guy on a penny farthing, is what it is. And it's actually a very nice album cover, a little bit dark, but at least it's a nice album cover. Now, this is actually where I came in, to be fair. Credit to, and although controversial, they've maybe lost their way in recent times, the Classic Rock magazine. They had A Crack in the Ice and the first song from Hypothetical, I think it is, from Threshold on the one CD. Just on the cover CD of the magazine. I had heard neither band at that stage, and I put it in, and I just played those songs for weeks and weeks and weeks, and eventually, credit to that CD, it got me into both bands, and I've stuck with both bands all the way through. This is Paul Wrightson on vocals again here, and very much like Rob Sowden, which I'm going to touch on again, these guys seem to have disappeared. And that's the thing for me, is all of the singers in this band, up to Paul Manzi, have all disappeared. what a waste of talent.
Yeah,
Do you
where
know,
are
we're
they?
always
What are they doing?
I mean that as a compliment, because if they had their name on something that was out there, I would probably go buy it blind, because I would want to hear what it was, do you know? Um, I mean, Paul Wrightson, I think, was involved with Blind Ego for a short space of time. That was Carly Valner's band that's in RPWL, his side project. But that's it as far as I can work out, because I must admit, I listened to this again and thought, I have to have more of this guy singing. I went to see what else he's been involved in. And all you do is you find threads on various forums and things asking, what is this guy on? Do you know? And that's all you find. But this is, I think, John Mitchell's debut with the band.
Yep.
And suddenly the guitar sound changes a little bit. It is forceful. It's urgent. It is a little bit more metal. I would agree with you there. We're kind of heading into that heavier era, which obviously resonates with me. I'm a big John Mitchell fan, to be fair. A crack in the ice. You say it often, Peter. Start an album with a great song. And A Crack in the Ice is a great song. It builds. It's got a little bit of samples and things at the start, and it draws you in. The vocal on it's tremendous. It's heavy, it's slow, it's fast, it's fantastic, it has to be said. And there's just so much in it. Pins and Needles, I really love. The Hanging Tree. I really like this album, I have to say, and I played this a lot. This came out in 1998, and it was possibly the album I played most in 1998. I have to say, yeah, really like that album.
My number 2 as well. I mean, yeah, here's a bit of a shift in sound a little bit. Got the new guitar player coming in. He's got more metal on the rhythms that he plays. You know, he's more of a riffy guy.
Yeah.
But he's got that kind of really sweet melodic David Gilmour style touch to a lot of his solos.
Yeah.
As you know, as compared to like the guys before him who were doing a little bit of the kind of the Rothery type of thing. And I just think he's a great fit for this band. Man, The Hanging Tree is just a wonderful song. I remember when this album came out, I played that song all the time. And A Crack in the Ice, like you said, is a cracking song to start off an album. It just pulls you right in. Double Vision is great. I have fond memories of when this album first came out. And like I said, and kind of like with the 2 albums that came before it, this is kind of where I would have wanted Marillion to go. And I hate to keep harping on that, but that's why I like this band so much, because they filled that gap for me. Marillion went and did something completely different. They went down different paths from what they did with Fish. And it's almost like these guys kind of came in and said, all right, we're going to kind of tread a little bit of similar territory here, but we're also going to do our own thing. And I really love this band for it. So I don't think they're copycats, but I think that they're similar in enough. And now, over the years, they've formed their own identity big time, which is great. But I think
definitely. That you hear it in Serena.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think I know what your number 1's going to be.
Well, my number 1 is Contagion.
Yep.
And I also do like the companion EP Contagion.
That's right.
And the companion EP Contagious, which they, in recent times, have. That is actually in these. They suggested how you put all this together.
Yeah.
Because what's on these goes with the story of what's on this. Now, bear with me, everybody, because the story of what's on this from an album from 2003 is about a virus that threatens humanity. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll move on. Okay. They were ahead of their time, shall we say, right? So there is a suggestion of how to put these 3 together to basically almost double the length of your album. So after the fans all said, please, please, please just put it all together, they put out, as I nearly drop it, Contagion Max, and put it in a different order. So for guys like me who went and got mini discs, if you remember mini discs, and I put all the tracks together and tried to blend them and all the sort of stuff, so to make the album that they suggested that we should have. They then went and did something different with it. I still love this. I must admit, I go back to the original when I want to listen to this album. I mean, I like this, and the package is great.
Look at that.
Yeah. And it's really nice. And I bought it from their Verglass website, where you can get most of their catalogue. So it's all signed and various things. So it's a lovely thing. I have to say. But it was a little bit odd for me to find it in that different order. But that, to me, this is an album that's it's grandiose and it's pompous and it's heavy. But the vocals on this album, we're in Rob Souden territory again, and the guy is absolutely superb here. He's just living the parts that he's playing on this album, because he's playing different parts and taking on a journey, and there is a journey, literal journey through the songs on the album. It's a person's journey through this time to try and get to the end and solve the problems and all these various things, and it's just fantastic. I think that arguably it's Mick Pointer's best performance with the band, a drummer who the band that he formed, Marillion, allowed him to be much maligned in the way that he left, and then some of the comments that have followed why he left. And when you listen to Script, the guy was outstanding on that album, and when you listen to Arena, the guy's outstanding in his own band. So go figure. But whatever the reason, I'm not sure. But I can take you through Witch Hunt, Painted Man, Skin Game, which is fantastic, and Spectre at the Feast. These are great songs. Unfortunately, it also takes me back to a time of one of I would go almost as far as to say embarrassing gigs that I've seen, because they played in the ferry. It was the Renfrew ferry in Glasgow at the time, and by the ferry I mean you're on a ferry, you're on the water. Okay, so you start the concert like this, you finish it like that because the tide goes out. Okay, I kid you not, you genuinely feel the tide come in and out as a band play. And when there is a venue that holds maybe 200, and there was, I think, 17 of us there, and the band come out, and the singer is all dressed up in all the garb to play the parts of the album with a top hat on and a cane.
To nobody.
To nobody. And then they gave it absolutely everything, and they were absolutely outstandingly good. And my memory of that gig is 17 people trying to make as much noise as they possibly could in between songs and not make it sound like we were trying to make them feel better.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the only time I've seen them, because funnily enough, they haven't played Scotland again, although they should have been playing Scotland, I think, in October. I had tickets because they're playing literally 20 miles down the road from me, which is very near for a concert. Obviously, that's been postponed, obviously, unfortunately, with everything that's going on. And now I won't see them with Paul Manzi, which I'm a little bit disappointed about. But there you go. Yeah, for me, Contagion is I'm going to use that phrase again, neo-prog, whatever way you want to put it, third wave of progressive music. I like that. I agree with that. There's bands like Credo and Galahad and a variety of different bands that fall into that category. Great bands too. Contagion, for me, is possibly my favourite album of that kind of era and of that ilk. I really, really like it. And I go back to it now, and it's just as strong now. It still has the same effect on me now as it did when I first listened to it. Love that album. Genuinely love that album.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this whole catalog is really good. And, you know, I changed my order on this multiple times. And I can't say anything bad about any of these albums. And, but, you know, in the end, I kind of, because again, I went and re-listened to a lot of these, and a couple of them I listened to for the first time and, you know, played them a few times, you know, so it's like almost like I just got them finally. But I kept going back to Pride, which is the second album. And I just think there are some songs on here that just mean so much to me, you know. Sirens.
Yes, great
Empire of a Thousand Days, Fool's Gold. I mean, I played this again this morning, and I was like, oh, man. It's, again, it just takes me back in time, right? Medusa.
Yeah.
The one weird song on this, it's not a weird song, but different from the rest. You know how we talked about earlier how a lot of Arena's material is very kind of like atmospheric and a little dark, sort of. Mm-hmm. Then you've got Welcome to the Cage, which is almost like their answer to Market Square Heroes, right? It's just like, it's big and upbeat and stabbing synths, and it's just like, yeah, get up, you know. It's like, and that's kind of like a little bit of an outlier on these first couple albums, but it's still absolutely terrific.
Still very good.
Yeah, it's a great album opener, right?
Yeah.
And then you got the Crying for Help stuff, kind of, you know, little short pieces and what have you in between stuff. I just a terrific album, and I think for me, it holds up really, really well. But, you know, you could ask me in a couple of weeks, and I'd be like, well, you know, The Visitor, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. I absolutely love, although we've agreed on some of where we've placed things, I absolutely love the fact that we've pulled strengths from different areas and different eras of this band, because I think there's a lot for people who like a different variety of progressive music here. If you like a bit of progressive metal, Arena can give you that. Maybe not all the way through their catalogue, but there's certain albums in there you're going to absolutely adore. But if you want something that's a little bit more purely progressive, well, they do that too. They do some short, sharp stuff. They do some epics. I think they've got an awful lot going for them, and they're one of those bands, as we seem to say an awful lot, why they're not more renowned, why people don't know them more. Maybe it is that inability to hold on to one singer, that face of the band, that that face that people go, oh, I see his face, I know that's Arena. I don't know, but the talent in this band, I mean, we've not even mentioned bassists and things along the way, and that's a real shame, to be fair, because they're all great. Yeah. But the talent in this band is incredible. Right from the start, some of the guys who are no longer with the band, right through to now, is incredible. I really hope that they can continue that on with the new lineup. I'm very, very, very interested to see what happens next.
We'll see. Time will tell, right? So because they do have another album in the works, so it's kind of it's listed on their on their Wikipedia page as to be determined. So we'll see when that comes out. So I know I'll be waiting for it. So,
absolutely.
So there you have it. Ranking the studio albums of Arena. For those of you who are fans, rank them as you like them. If you have not heard this band before, your homework is to go out and check out a couple of these albums, see what you think, come back and report to the rest of us and let us know how you like them. So
I think that the lists underneath this video, I think, will be really, really different. I think we'll see lots of different combinations, lots of favourite albums. Ones that neither of us have picked out as the best will be number 1 and 2 in people's lists. I love looking through the lists and seeing people agreeing with us. That's nice. But I also love looking through the lists and seeing people disagree with us. As you always say, rank them how you like them. And it's great to read through and people add their comments about why they like them and what they mean to them. And that's what music should do. It's great.
That's right. We all hear them differently. We all have, a lot of this music has affected us in different ways, different times of our lives, and that's the way it should be. If we all like the same stuff the same way, this would be a pretty damn boring world, right? Yeah. So anyway, guys, there you have it. Arena ranking the albums. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube.
All the damn time.
That's right. There we go. So for Steven Reid, I am Pete Pardo. Steven will be back in a couple of weeks. We got a couple other things we're working on, and we'll probably need to do a new review show at some point. New stuff.
Yeah, lots of good stuff out.
Yeah. Steven and I are going to be ranking the catalog. If I think it's next on our list, but Haken.
Yes. New album as well. Yes.
Yeah, I just did a review of the new album on here yesterday, so I'm ready to go with that whenever you're ready. So maybe next week or the week after.
Yeah, I'm up for that. That'll be
okay.
great.
So that's coming up soon too. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.